Hello, people, welcome back to the channel. I'm glad to be able to speak to you again. Now, we find ourselves in a very peculiar and a very perilous time with regards to the corona pandemic that we are in today. On one hand, the number of cases are going up. On the other hand, the lockdown and the various restrictions that were in place are being relaxed one by one. Now, the reason for this is the mortality rate of the corona infection in India has been estimated to be around 1.5 to 2%, less than 2%. So the union or the state government can only lock down a state for so long. The time has come for them to weigh the needs of the rest of the 99% of the population, to this 1.5 or 2% of the people that may succumb to the corona infection. So they had to make the choice to reopen and relax the restrictions. But we must remember that this 1.5% or 2% is when comparing the entire population who is getting infected with corona, which include the vast majority of which include healthy young adults. If you take the subsection of the elderly patients or patients who have diabetes or other risk factors which can worsen the corona infection, in such patients the mortality rate will be much higher. And also, if the infection comes to our relative, our father, our mother, or our elder brother or sister, it is not, they will not die 2%. We will lose the whole person. So now is the time for us to be most vigilant, most careful. Go out of the house only if absolutely necessary. And if there was a time to maintain proper social distancing, wearing a mask, and diligently washing your hands, now is the time more than ever. So I just wanted to leave that out there. Today's video is about another topic, a topic that might actually be counterintuitive to what I just said. But we have been locked up for almost half a year now. We would have been postponing many of our travels and all that, and kudos for doing that for a long time. And it may have become unavoidable for us to do some travel. So today's video is about what are the precautions to take while traveling. So I myself had to travel from Chennai to Ernakulam. So I thought I will share with you what are the steps I undertook to complete this journey. And I was making this journey to visit my mother, who is above 60 years, and also to visit my wife, who is expecting our second child. So it was especially important that I take all precautions because they are especially vulnerable to this corona infection. So the first consideration I had to think about was the mode of transport. Should I take the flight like I always do from Chennai to Ernakulam, or should I drive down? So I decided against taking the flight. That was because first, for me to reach the airport, I have to either hire a taxi. So how good the disinfection of the taxi is, and whether the taxi driver is he not harboring the infection. So there were so many uncertainties. I thought it is better to avoid a taxi or other public transport to get to the airport. And also in the airport, inside the airplane, it is a closed compartment. Air conditioning is unavoidable in the airplane. And even though people will be wearing masks, it is not enforced all the time, especially when they're having meals and all that. The masks have to be off. And I thought it was too much of a risk to be 1 hour inside the airplane in a closed compartment. So, taking all that into consideration, I decided to drive down. So there was a colleague friend of mine also who wanted to make the same journey. So we decided to carpool together. So the best way to travel in a car with a companion is, if one person is in the driver's seat driving, the companion should sit in the rear seat on the opposite side so that the maximum social distancing can be maintained, and also travel with the windows down so that you are not in a closed compartment, so avoid using the air conditioner. But we didn't follow this because my friend and I, both of us are doctors, and we had just finished our quarantine, and we had tested ourselves for corona. So we were pretty certain that both of us were not infected. So, and it is quite difficult to travel from Chennai till Ernakulam without air conditioning. So we were seated side by side, and we did use air conditioning. But for short journeys, especially if you do not know whether your companion or the driver is positive or not, it is always better to do it the way I said. Another thing that we made sure is that we wore masks throughout the journey. Even though we were sure that the other person is not infected, we made sure that we wore the mask throughout the 12-hour journey. Now, the mask we chose were the N95 mask. Actually, the ordinary mask is quite sufficient. The ordinary surgical mask, the three-layer mask which we put around the ear, loosely around the ear, that is quite sufficient. But I thought the extra precaution of using the N95 mask will be better, because we don't know what situations may arise. So if some unexpected situation arises such that we have to spend time in a closed environment with other people, that time this ordinary surgical mask will not protect us from airborne droplet infections. The way this mask acts is it prevents us from infecting other people. If we sneeze or when we speak or when we cough, it prevents droplets from escaping into the air, and it gets trapped inside the mask. That is how this mask functions. It does not protect us from droplets which are already there in the air. So I thought N95 mask, which has the filtering capacity to filter out germs, airborne droplets of the infection. So I thought we would it would be wiser to use this mask, because during such a long journey we cannot predict what situations may arise. So we wore this N95 mask throughout the journey. And whichever mask you are wearing, it is important that you do not take it off. What some people may be tempted to do is they will wear the mask when they get out of the car, and when they have to go out to buy something or pay a toll or something, when they have to open the windows, they will wear a mask, and the rest of the journey they will remove and keep the mask somewhere. So that is not at all advisable, because rather than filtering out the air, how a mask protect us is 99% of the time how the mask protect a person from being infected is by preventing us from touching the face. 99% of the time how we get the infection is when we touch a infected surface like money or any other surface, and then when we touch our nose or mouth or eyes, uh, the virus will enter our body. So that is how 99% of the time a person gets infected. Only 1% of the time do we actually get exposed to droplets in the air, and we get infected because of that. So 99% of the protection of a mask is preventing us from touching our face. So if we remove, keep on removing the mask or adjusting the mask, pulling down the mask to talk or pulling down the mask to drink water and then putting it back, keeping on readjusting it, when we keep touching the mask, it it increases the risk of us getting the infection, because this the mask acts like a magnet, attracting all these germs from our hands and keeping it very close to our nose and mouth. So actually the risk of infection is more when you wear a mask and you keep touching the mask and keep adjusting the mask. So once you wear the mask, you have to leave it in place and do not take it off until you complete the journey, or maybe after 5 to 6 hours when you have to drink water or eat food. That time you remove the mask and discard it. Do not keep it in your pocket or in your dashboard, which can all be potentially infectious areas. Your pocket, especially, will have your wallet, keys, and all, which has been in contact with potential infectious fluids and all that. So do not do that. You discard the mask, or if it is expensive, N95 masks are expensive, so you can fold it and keep it in a sealable pouch and use it after 5 days. You cannot use it again in that journey. You should have a spare mask, fresh mask to wear again. So that is a very important point to be noted. Another extra precaution we used is we used something called as a face shield. Now, a face shield is originally designed to prevent splashes to the face when a medical personnel or when a doctor or someone who is assisting a doctor in doing some procedure like intubation, which is like introducing a tube into the airway of a patient or collecting some fluids from the body. When there is a potential of a splash, the splash of the blood or the fluid to fall on your face, the face shield will block all that. But in corona times, studies has found that just wearing a face shield on top of your mask dramatically cuts down your risk of getting infection. This is again because of it prevents us touching the mask and touching on the face. So if you are wearing a face shield on top of your mask, it is very unlikely that you will touch your face or keep adjusting your mask, because it will be the face shield will prevent you from doing that. And it will remind you, because mask we may not remember all the time. We may adjust it when especially N95 mask becomes quite uncomfortable. If you are wearing N95 mask, you have to wear it quite tightly, so after some time it may become a bit uncomfortable, and it is quite natural that you will try and adjust the mask, and it is an involuntary process and you may not be thinking about it. So if you are wearing a face shield, then you will not have easy access. You have to go under the face shield or remove the face shield first. So it will remind you and it will prevent you from touching your face. So wearing a face shield also gives you much more protection than just wearing a mask. So because of that, it is also very important that you keep the face shield on all the time, not when you are interacting with other people or when you are getting out of your car. Also, we planned the journey in such a way that we could minimize interaction with other people during the journey. We carried our own food, our own water. We carried the exact amount of change so that we don't have to accept change back from people whenever we had to do a financial interaction. But some interactions are unavoidable. For example, at the toll booth, my car was not equipped with the FASTag. That is one mistake which I did. So when you are traveling, especially interstate, make sure that your car is equipped with FASTag so that you don't have to interact with the toll booth employees. But I had to physically hand them the money and then receive their receipt. And also at the border we had to verify our papers, our permit to cross the borders, so that also had to be done physically. So like that, some interactions are unavoidable. So whenever you have to interact with a person, make sure that you are carrying hand rub, alcohol based hand rub or disinfectant in your car, and immediately after the interaction you disinfect your hands and also other areas that you may have touched, like your steering wheel or the power windows button that you would have used in between the interaction. So make sure that you disinfect all those areas immediately after the interaction. And once I reached home, I immediately put my clothes to the wash. So normally, you know how mothers are; they will be the ones who handle your clothes and wash them for you. But I instructed her not to touch any of the clothes, and I myself washed them separately. And I had a bath too, so to disinfect myself. And when you are carrying alcohol based disinfectant or hand rub in your car, make sure that you don't leave it on the dashboard where it can heat up and potentially cause a fire. Also, don't use aerosolized hand rubs. There are hand rubs available which sprays out like how a deodorant sprays out. So don't use such things, because when you use such a hand rub, it spreads inside the car, and if you happen to light a open flame in the car, it can potentially cause an explosion. So don't use aerosolized disinfectant. Use the ordinary hand rub, in which when you press it just pours out and not sprays out like in a deodorant, pressurized deodorant can. So if you follow these steps, it is possible for you to safely travel in this time of corona infection, and keep yourself and your family safe. So thank you for your patient listening.